But let's talk about the win and look ahead to the Jets and then the Bengals and then the Steelers. 3 straight home games with a chance to take control in the AFC Northeast with the Baltimore Sun. He's on the Window Nation guest hotline. Let's welcome back to the show Sam Cohn. Sam, good afternoon. How you feeling today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing all right. We've been talking about the defense, 5 straight games. They've given up less than 20 points. 4 of those consecutive have been wins. 3 of those wins have been on the road. Let's not forget, they won 3 straight games away from M&T Bank Stadium. So, Sam, how much better are you feeling about the defense than you were, say, when Houston dropped 44 on them about 5 weeks ago?
It feels a little bit like deja vu, like we've been through this before, right? This was the same as last year when for 10 weeks they were one of the worst defenses in the league, and then something minor, whether it's personnel or they look themselves in the mirror and they figure something out, and then they're one of the best in the league. It seems to be as simple as that. Last year it was our Darius Washington, and this year it's bringing in Alohi Gilman. Obviously they've unlocked Kyle Hamilton in sort of the reverse instances last year where they were able to back him up and let him play more safety last year. Now he's a game wrecker up near the line of scrimmage. They have a lot of faith in what Alohi Gilman's been able to do, and Malachi Stark seems to be really turning a corner. So I think there's a bunch of things you can point to on the defense that they've figured out and are now working. Having Malachi Starks and Teddy Buchanan really turn a corner since the bye week and seem to be really productive members of this defense is a huge part of that. Obviously, what Alohi Gilman brings to the table, and having a guy like Kyle Hamilton, I think the confidence in that group is, even though it's the Dolphins and it's the Vikings and it's the Browns, there's still a lot more confidence in what this defense has been able to do, and a lot of it seems to be snowballing success.
Hey, Sam, to me, watching Isaiah Likely, something's wrong. It's contract year, I know that. He just doesn't look like the yak stuff is not there like it's been. He doesn't look as fast or as explosive to me.
I don't know if it's necessarily that, like, he's not the athlete he was. I think there are certainly a lot of people, maybe myself included, who expected him to have a step up in production this year. He showed a lot of flashes of that last year. I think there was certainly an expectation of that. But coming into this year, there was always going to be 1 or 2 people who fell by the wayside a little bit more than others, and that's the nature of having, 3, you could even call it 4 viable, proven receivers, and 2 to 3 more tight ends who can catch passes. Like, there's just so many guys. Not all those guys are going to get the touches or get the reps or get into the flow or get in the consistency that you might expect. I think if you still, if you're Lamar Jackson, you still have the utmost trust in Isaiah Likely, and if it comes down to it, he can still make a play. But I think it's just an instance of there are other guys who are getting those touches, and you're just not seeing him put in situations where he can explode and make a play like you might have expected by nature of where the offense is at and a lot of the issues the offense is dealing with throughout the season.
What's your opinion of what you've seen this year thus far from Roger Rosengarten?
Roger Rosengarten, I think, he's such a good guy. He seems to have regressed a little bit. I think the offensive line as a whole is a part of the team that isn't talked about a ton. I mean, there are times where they look fantastic, and there are times where, like against the Browns, where Lamar Jackson gets sacked 5 times, and it's like, okay, how do you put that in context where Myles Garrett is the greatest pass rusher of a generation, and he's getting 4 sacks by lining up in different spots? Lamar Jackson's maybe holding onto the ball a second longer than he probably should have, and he's finding a second way to get into the backfield. Roger Rosengarten has had a lot of good moments, and he's been solid for them this year. I wouldn't say he's necessarily like, he's not on the bottom half. He's one of the better guys on that offensive line for an offensive line that hasn't had a lot of success this year, hasn't been what the Ravens need in terms of protecting Lamar Jackson and getting some push up front, and they've admitted that.
It seemed yesterday Lamar was a little off throwing the ball. He missed Andrews. He missed Likely. The one out there to Zay, missed that. So it just seemed like Lamar didn't have his A game.
Yeah, I think part of that has to do with Myles Garrett. I think when the offensive line is what it has been, where they're not protecting him in the way that they need to be to let routes develop, to let the play develop upfield, and Myles Garrett and even Carson Schlesinger and and other guys on the defensive front are able to get in the backfield, he looks a little bit more frenetic back there than maybe he has been. So I think part of that just comes down to not being able to have that extra second to plant and go, or he's a little bit more, he's almost too patient maybe in trying to let the routes develop and trying to get the ball out. I think there's layers to things that aren't working. It's not exactly one singular issue, whether it's guys aren't getting open quickly, Lamar Jackson isn't taking the right 2 steps to maybe get away and maybe give himself an extra step. The offensive line isn't holding for another second to 2 seconds. I think there's layers to the issues that are manifesting in an offense that seems to be stalling out or just not moving with the consistency that they were last year. Remember, this was a historically good offense the last 2 years, getting the absolute best out of Lamar Jackson, and they're still finding ways to put points on the board and to win games. They're still among the highest scoring offenses in the NFL. It's just, you look at the floor of what they are seems a lot lower than what the floor was last year.
What's your impression of the Loopster so far this year?
He's been exactly what you could have hoped for. When you have a rookie kicker come in, if you're not really talking about him too much, if you're not really talking about him at all, by week 11, you're in a good spot. I mean, he went into Cleveland. That was one of his toughest tests to date in the wind and the weird conditions. And this is now, 2 weeks in a row where when the offense hasn't been able to do much, particularly in the first half, but he's keeping them afloat. If Tyler Loop isn't as consistent as he's been, and he's not exactly fitting it through a window in the middle of the uprights, but he's fitting it through the uprights nonetheless. That's really all you can ask for. No one expected a rookie kicker to be perfect, and I think he's exceeded the expectations of what a lot of people might have thought he'd be able to do in year one, just to kind of keep them afloat in games when the biggest issue with this offense is probably the red zone offense. They're still able to put points on the board because he can fit the ball to the uprights.
Sam Cohn, Baltimore Sun. I'm still waiting on that game-winning field goal, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. All right, here they are, 5-5. And, me and Nolan a couple weeks back when they were 1-5, when they lost to the Rams, I asked a question to the listeners and everyone, will the Ravens be 5-5 given the easy part of the schedule? I said no. Nolan said no. Vinny said yes. Now I expect they better be 7-5. 3 straight home games, Jets, Bengals, and Steelers. So when we're sitting here talking on Monday morning, December 8th, the Ravens' record will be what, Sam Cohn?
I think they get to 10 wins. You have to at least split with the Steelers. You have to win at least one of those, and I think you either have to beat the Packers or the Patriots. Those are all tough games. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. It'll be interesting to see if Joe Burrow is able to come back for more likely the second time the Ravens play Cincinnati. He probably won't be back in time for the Thanksgiving game, but maybe by the second time they play, you have to kind of sweep through the division or get as close to as you can. Maybe you beat the Bengals twice, beat the Steelers once, and then beat the Packers. I think they get to 10 wins, and I think they win the division. But there's certainly a delta between the caliber of offense they're playing now and where they need to be to get to that point. Like, they got back to 5-5, but even they can see, like anyone with eyes can see, there's a lot of room for improvement. They're not necessarily playing like a team that is ready for the playoffs, but they're playing like a team who is certainly capable of getting to the playoffs based on the schedule in front of them. As long as they're playing their best football by late December, they should be fine. But I think the schedule is soft enough and they have the talent enough to get to where they need to be over the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Sam Cohn, Baltimore Sun. Sam, appreciate the time as always. We don't talk to you. Happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays to you and the family, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Sam.
Same to you guys. Thanks so much.
There's Sam Cohn. 10-7 is what he's leaning towards right now. We'll just take him one game at a time, right, Nolan?